Hi, I'm Lisa Hayes with Dreams for Society, where we imagine, visualize, and create dreams for society. We interview all kinds of people that provide public service to us to make this a better world, such as political leaders, social leaders, civil leaders, and metaphysical leaders. And we're so excited that today we have with us Kerry Keller, the director of the School of Metaphysics in Indianapolis. He's also on the National Board of Directors. There are, 13 branches, 12 to 13 branches around the country?
13 right now, yes.
That's so awesome. So it's quite an honor to be the director of the School of Metaphysics in Indianapolis, the only branch in Indiana, correct?
Right, correct.
So today we're going to talk about divine friendship and what it means to be a divine friend. I guess the dictionary says you've got to bond, you've got to connect, and there has to be trust. But before we get into that juicy topic, because we all want to be divine friends with everyone, right? Especially ourselves. We want to kind of hear a little bit more about the journey that you took throughout your life. I know you were an entrepreneur for over 30 years in interior design and furniture design and distribution. Tell us a little bit of how you got to this point, this honor of being the director of the School of Metaphysics, and then we'll talk a little bit about what the school is offering for us.
My journey is rather interesting, at least from my perspective, because I think most of my life I've backed into almost everything that I've done. I went to college to play basketball. I had no idea what I wanted to major in. I tried math, I tried psychology, I tried sciences. None of them really were interesting. And when I came home after my sophomore year, I knew I had to be making some choices, and I actually got a part-time job at home working for an interior designer.
Okay.
And the lights just turned on. And I was at a liberal arts school, and so I remember going back early to change all my courses. I tried to take every design course, drafting course, art history course, whatever I could find. And I went from being a very average C student to getting all A's, to the point where my father calls me up and says, "What are you trying to pull?" He couldn't even believe it.
Oh.
And so I ended up transferring to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale.
Okay.
And they had an architectural school and a design curriculum in it. And I got a degree in roughly 5 years, I guess. And that was kind of weird too, because I remember going to the first Design 101 class, and the first thing they do is go around to everybody and they hand you a shoebox and say, "Design it." And so I got paper and I made furniture and I did all this three-dimensional stuff in this shoebox. And the professor comes around and says, "You've had design before." And I said, "Not in this lifetime." And because everybody else was drawing pictures on the sides of their box, nobody was putting anything in the middle.
Oh.
And so I was already doing three-dimensional space design when everybody was just putting pictures on the wall of this and that and so forth. And so I never got off the dean's list from there. They brought in companies from out of the school, and I would always place in their contests and things like that. So it was astonishing to me, but it was all my intuitive understandings that I brought from previous to this life. And so I had a 30-plus year career working for people, but about 27 years of that was having my own 2 businesses. I was married, I had a dog, I had a house, I was a weekend warrior athlete, all those things that everybody thinks they're supposed to be. And nothing was exactly really what I wanted. And I did very well as a designer. But one day on a Sunday, I was driving down the highway. I lived in St. Louis at the time. And I was looking for my sports station, of course. But all I could find was this lady, Dr. Laurel Clark, interpreting dreams on the radio. And I going, I had dreams, but that was totally out of my realm.
Okay.
And because I couldn't find the sports station, I just listened to her. And 3 days later, I found myself at the School of Metaphysics, knocking on the door, saying, "What are you?" The woman that I was married to kept telling me how spiritual she was, and I thought she was crazy. And so I ended up buying some books and signing her up for classes as a Christmas gift.
What year was this?
2002.
Okay.
And so she started classes in January, and about the third class, she comes home at night and she says, Kerry, you've got to go to these classes. And I looked at her and I said, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And so reluctantly I did.
Did your wife go with you?
She was already in the classes. I started in a separate class because she was already, three or four lessons into it. And my teacher was a 21-year-old woman, very beautiful, very naive, and wore every night. She wore, for those of you my age, a June Cleaver full-length dress that I couldn't take my eyes off her. I was just like spellbound, except she was so naive, except the words that came out of her mouth about metaphysics, my jaw was just in my lap the whole time.
Wow.
And by the time I got to the sixth lesson, I'm going, my God, everybody on the planet should be knowing this about themselves.
Okay.
And within a year, I fell in love with it. And within a year, I was teaching.
And as a mind coach, correct? Kind of.
Well, teaching at the School of Metaphysics is something that anybody that goes through the first cycle, and there's 4 cycles, it's kind of like college almost. You learn
You're going to get a friend here.
I see that.
Come here, little girl.
That's all right.
This is our Dreams for Society mascot, Loki.
Okay. She wants a little piece of the camera. Anyway,
Okay.
So part of moving into the second cycle of school is learning how to teach, because you learn about 10 or 20 times as fast by teaching what you've already gained.
Right.
And and then within 3 years, I was directing the school in St. Louis.
Really? And then what year was this?
2006, something like that.
Very exponential path for you.
Yeah,
almost as if you were catching up.
I had pretty much semi-retired from my 2 businesses by then. And most of the people in my life had moved out of St. Louis, except for my sister. My parents had passed away. I unfortunately got a divorce. And so I was kind of footloose, and I was totally intrigued by metaphysics. And for purposes of this conversation, metaphysics is the study of the mind, of consciousness. Consciousness is what we think, how we receive from our 5 senses, and then how do we make choices based on the experiences in our life, people, circumstances, our 5 senses, our emotions, our attitudes, our ego, all of those things. So it's a very profound course to get to know yourself from the outside in.
And these identities that we have that maybe get in the way of getting to know ourselves, that differentiates us between humans and our little kitty cats. Maybe.
Yes. So. The biggest thing that we have that no other animal on the planet has is an imagination.
Oh, I love that.
So we have the ability to take one or more circumstances and reason with it and imagine what we would rather have that's greater or more fun or more expansive or whatever. They're looking at dolphins and elephants and things like that. But as far as they can tell, their minds, animal minds, are very habitual. They learn by trial and error. They try something, they like it, they keep doing it. They try something, they don't like it, they stop. And as you can tell by pets, then they're also very connected to us through our emotions.
Right.
So they bond with us through our emotions very easily. And, I've had pets and I'll swear up and down that they're pretty intelligent, but I understand the mental part and the imaginary part.
And she likes the energies. That's why she's right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like this.
So, even the Bible and all the other holy works I've learned talk about the fact that the human being is superior to all the other animals because of the ability to imagine. And of course, then that gets you into the whole concept of metaphysics is we're actually creators, which is what the school teaches is how do you use your mind correctly or efficiently or even productively to cause the circumstances and the conditions and your destiny, the things in your life that you want. Because most people in the world, certainly in our culture and in the United States, but most people have been taught and pretty much programmed from the day you're born to go out into the world, experience it, be curious, and whatever you find, you have to respond to it.
Right, right.
And then if you don't like it, then we get in the reaction mode, which we certainly see all over the world now. There's a lot of people in reaction mode. And so the process of learning, I won't say is flawed, but it hasn't evolved yet, so that we're starting to teach people that we have the ability to cause our own learning, our own forward progress, our own changes, our own evolution. But we have to start telling people, you have to decide what you want. And so we all know that children have lost a lot of that in school these days. You don't hear somebody talking about, well, who do you want to be, what do you want to do? And so we're finding that the students in our school are all adults. They have to be 18 or over.
Okay.
And it's an evening school.
Okay.
So we have people from 18 to, I think 91 is the oldest gentleman we have, not here in Indianapolis, but in one of the other schools.
Oh, that's nice.
And so age doesn't make any difference.
Right.
But the point is, no matter where you are in life, I mean, I was 55 years old when I started.
Wow.
And so I see people coming in at 20 and I get jealous, and then I finally realize, no, but I had all these experiences in which I now have to be able to share and teach my metaphysical perspective from, even though I didn't understand metaphysics then. So the point of all this is creation is talked about in all kinds of ways. From a consciousness standpoint, there are guidelines, if you want to call them that, or parameters, or truths, efficient ways that we can direct our mind to cause whatever it is that we want to cause. We call those universal laws. Most people have heard of the law of attraction.
Right.
There's 15, 20 more that we use every day. And we all use them. You have created your life without knowing how you did it. I created my life without knowing how I did it.
Right.
Because nobody teaches that. And so I've now been in the school for 14. I'm moving into my 15th year. And so I have moved through, I'm in the fourth cycle. I've kind of taken my time through all that. You can go quickly or you can go slowly. In fact, the first and the second cycle I've moved through twice.
How many cycles are there?
There's 4.
Okay.
They're based on the levels of mind. Okay. So everybody starts at the very beginning to learn, how does the conscious mind work? How does it function? What is its duty? Well, how does it perform?
Right.
And then you learn the relationship between the conscious mind, where we are now, and the inner levels of mind. There's 6 levels of inner mind, 4 in subconscious, and 2 the highest part of our mind, which is superconscious mind. Okay. And so you learn in about the 4th lesson very quickly that there's a purpose for each level of mind. Each level of mind functions differently. And so in the conscious mind, if you think about it, what our purpose is to go out every day and experience life in whatever way we choose to experience it. And then we decide, what do we like, or what do we want? So really everything that happens to us is I want this, I don't want that. Or I like this, I don't like that. It boils down to that.
Yeah.
And so what you come to understand very quickly...
I kept trying to keep her away from you.
Sorry. I'm a magnet for pets. I've always been a magnet for pets.
Thank you.
That's okay. What we find out very quickly is what you're hearing a lot all over the world now, is that your thoughts are the cause of everything. If you're thinking it, then the inner mind is what helps you produce it. So I can put a little science in it to give you some intellectual perspective. When you have a desire or you set a goal, pretty much the same, that's a thought form. It's also an image in your mind.
Right.
And as soon as you have an experience and say, I want to hold on to the cat.
Right.
Then that thought form, or I want to go to Hawaii, or I'm hungry, I need a sandwich, or whatever it is, then every thought of desire that you have or want is immediately planted into the inner mind or subconscious mind, the highest level of subconscious mind. And neuroscience now knows this, and not for a long time. You got yourself stuck. And there's an energy field called subconscious substance.
Okay.
It's a neutral energy field that pervades the entire universe. And I even read an article about 6 months ago in neuroscience, and they didn't explain how, but they now know that if you have a thought or you snap your fingers, in a quarter of a second, it's on the other side of the universe.
That's amazing.
Now, how do you measure that? I don't have any idea. But the point is, that's faster than the speed of light, which
Right.
when I grew up, that was the fastest thing possible. So they now understand that consciousness is something that is between all of us.
Right.
And once we move out of conscious mind into subconscious mind, it's easier to tell why and how we're all connected. So in subconscious mind, my attention is there. My subconscious mind knows what your subconscious mind is doing. Yours knows what mine's doing. We're all totally connected. It's in the conscious mind, we can't tell that. And the reason we can't tell is in the conscious mind, all our thoughts are vibrations.
Okay.
And when we get really busy, which most people are, scattered, stressed, emotional, whatever, on autopilot, then that means there's a lot of vibrations going on in the conscious mind that serve as kind of a barrier or a cloud that it's harder for us to perceive inward to what we see. And each level of mind as we go inward is at a higher frequency or a higher vibration, which is why sometimes when we receive an epiphany, we're looking for something and we get this image and we go, oh, that's the answer.
Right.
And then we either try to write it down or we try to speak it and we have a hard time because it just came from a higher frequency into conscious mind, which is the lowest frequency of the entire mind.
That's interesting.
And so it takes us a while to quiet the mind and decide, okay, what did I just receive? On the inner levels, it makes tons of sense to us and we get excited. But on the outer levels, when we go to use it or put it in and apply it or speak it, it takes us a while to do that. Which also explains why psychics receive things and then they have to figure out how to communicate it. And why, we all have different inner mind talents. We all have all the talents, but some are more pronounced for others in the way we handle our life.
Right.
And so you begin to understand how the mind works. When you plant that thought form, that desire in the inner level of mind, the purpose of the subconscious mind is to manifest your thought. So now you're beginning to wonder, it's like, oh, how does it know which ones to manifest? Well, it's going to try to manifest all of them. But we're the one that's in charge. But nobody's told us that consciously we're responsible for how we think or how to be productive. So you might say, gee whiz, I want to go to Hawaii in 3 weeks. But then the next thought, it says, well, I don't know if that's possible because I don't know if I can get off work. Or I got 3 kids and they'll be mad if we don't take them and I don't know if I have enough money. So we have second and third and God knows how many thoughts that might second guess your first thought. So then the inner mind is going, okay, what do you want? So our negativity, our fear-based thinking, our doubts, even our self-worth contributes to what we produce in life. And so metaphysics allows you to quiet your mind so that you pay much more attention to what are you thinking, where do the thoughts come from. You have thoughts and they come from 3 different places. The original thoughts come from inner mind out here. We select them. That's one of the first things they taught me when I came to school of metaphysics, that you're going to select all your thoughts. And I looked at them and I go, really? I couldn't even imagine that. Because, your mind's moving so fast, you just feels like everything's just happening.
Right. Yeah.
But every thought we have is a choice.
I love that. And I agree. Let me backtrack a minute on that. Every thought we have is a choice. Because I've been saying a lot to people that we are creators and not consumers.
Right.
We've been programmed, and I know you talk a lot about unwinding and deprogramming and letting go of what we've been taught to believe. And I always like to say the word lie isn't believe. We are creating our experiences, and then we get to experience them.
Right.
And if we are cognizant of that, then we are the masters of our own realm. I don't understand yet how I'm creating this beautiful interview with you right now. However, I do understand, because of the magic that I've practiced with, if I am at a higher frequency somehow, like the joy and the excitement and the friendship, the divine friends we are, then I know that it's going to look like that. You know, I know how to control the flavor, like the thoughts in my mind or the feelings in my heart. I don't yet understand how, from a panoramic perspective, how I'm actually creating and manifesting this interview. But I do know that if I choose the right thoughts and feel the right feelings in a high frequency modality, that this interview is going to turn out perfectly or in the highest good of all. So we're creators and we experience the creators. We're not consumers of what's already been created. Does that jive with you in terms of...
Well, yes. Unfortunately, from the day one, maybe that's not a fair word. Unfortunately, it's not fair. It's where we are in our evolution as human beings.
Right.
When you're born, when I'm born, when anyone is born, moving out of the womb into the physical, typically within minutes or hours, sometimes it's days, but most of the time it's within minutes or hours, the soul enters our body.
Right.
Which is an energetic existence. And the soul chose you to learn specific things in this lifetime. Okay. Because a lot of times people go, I can't even imagine why I would choose this life. A lot of people would go there. But the soul and subconscious mind don't look at life the same way we do in the physical. Life is neutral to the subconscious mind. There is no right and wrong, good and bad. We make all that up here.
Yeah, we make it all up here.
Yeah.
We make it all up.
Right. So that's how we program ourselves.
Through our thoughts.
Through our thoughts. What you've learned from your parents or whoever you were raised, your environment. And so you might even think about what were the conditions that you were born in. The soul spends some time before it enters in that body, or whichever body it chooses, to look at the conditions to see if that lifetime in that body is the most desirable for the soul to learn what it wants to learn. Mm-hmm. So our understanding that the purpose of life is bigger than us being a body and a brain and functioning in this physical world. That's certainly what we need to learn how to do. At the same time, we have a higher existence, which involves the spirit and the soul. Well, what's the soul's purpose? Mm-hmm. The soul's purpose is to live and keep expanding its awareness, just like we're trying to expand our awareness.
Okay.
Except it does it from lifetime to lifetime. And each lifetime, it's kind of like a new start. Because you don't remember, most people don't remember their past lives. Some people do. And which there's a reason for that, because then we would also remember all our attachments and all our limitations. And so the point is, when the soul enters your body, it brings an energy field with it. We have 7 layers of energy fields within us that holds our consciousness. So you have a brain, which is a new set of consciousness to fill up and to gain experiences in this lifetime. But you have all the experiences from every lifetime in your energy field. The soul brings it with you. So most people operate in their lifetime to a great degree from their inner knowing.
Okay. Their memories?
Their subconscious memories.
Okay.
They're here. We aren't given the tools until you take something like a metaphysical course to understand, well, where did that thought come from? When you have an epiphany or somebody says something and people are saying this and you go, no, this is the answer. You don't know how you know, you just know, well, it's the truth that came from the inner levels of mind.
Okay.
And we access it all the time without really realizing. When you're a young child, you use that all the time. We look at children as if they're dumb. They don't know anything yet, but they're pretty darn smart because they're now operating out of subconscious intelligence. And so, which is why people say, well, I think my child's talking to somebody or has an imaginary friend. Well, no, it's not. It's another entity or whatever.
Right.
And so that's a whole facet of living that we haven't paid enough attention to. And so as the soul is entering your body and you start becoming used to the physical life, well, the physical life is all about the 5 senses and our experiences here. And children are very curious. For the first 4, 5, 6, 7 years, they're everywhere, investigating everything to their ability. They're growing like a weed, and they're naive, they're vulnerable, and they're amazing.
And they're not limited by their identity or their beliefs.
Right, because they haven't built that many yet.
Okay.
So when you come into the world, you come in with the soul's help, with the idea that there's truth, there's respect, there's trust, there's love, and all the high evolving ways of thinking that we all can imagine. But we don't always get that.
So children are naturally inclined to be divine friends with each
Yes.
other.
Right.
So let's get into that a little bit. The topic of what characteristics exist if we have a divine friendship with someone. What would be the top characteristics?
Well, it's what we all seem to be kind of striving for, is to return to. And that's exactly what it is. We have to return to what we call unconditional love, or seeing the good in everyone. And we all know that's hard.
Mm.
You know, we get irritated by somebody doing something or not doing something.
Mm.
Well, that's what the world and humans have to learn now, is because as you're growing up, when you didn't receive the love and the respect and the trust and the nurturing and so forth that you expected as a child, that's when the ego shows up and you start developing a personality so that you can thrive in this world.
Okay.
So a lot of people talk about the ego as if it's bad, and it does some pretty crummy stuff, but it also is what motivates you to be safe.
Is the ego then the level of mind that has the lowest frequency that you're talking about?
It's in the conscious mind, and its purpose is to motivate you to be safe.
Okay.
But it only is familiar with the physical. It knows nothing about the inner levels of mind and that part of life.
Would it be the lowest frequency then in the
Yes.
mind? Okay.
Yes. And so that's why people say when you get in a tight situation or emergency, you immediately go to fight or flight. Your ego is your identity. It's how you see yourself in this physical life. And most people see themselves as stuck in their circumstances or the conditions. They live in this family, they work for this boss, they have to follow the rules of this city, and there's rules everywhere because humans haven't learned how to take care of themselves and be nice to everybody. And so we get that sensation that this is all there is. The conditions in life, and you choose your career and your friendships, and you choose your family and all that. It's you do that within the conditions of life. And then along comes the School of Metaphysics and says, okay, but you have a higher existence, which is where the soul comes. You live in this existence, but you're not from this existence. You're from a spirit and a soul. So now we realize, okay, we have two perspectives to be looking at all the time. How do we live in this physical world, but how do we come from a higher place? So divine friendship or divine relationships, even divine love, is coming from a higher set of standards, in that even though it's sometimes hard to see in the physical, everybody comes from a good place. We have all learned to react to what we didn't get growing up.
Oh, okay.
So I'll give you a couple examples. When I was teaching in Chicago, I had a student, I think she was in her middle 40s, black, jovial woman, just a pleasure to be around. And she learned, or told her story, was that when she was a year old, her father died, and her mother remarried, and her stepfather treated her like dirt, and constantly told her she would never amount to anything. When she got to high school, she would never graduate, she would get pregnant, she would be on welfare, she would just be worthless, and it was just beat into her constantly. Well, I think she said she graduated second in her class.
Wow.
And she went on to college, which they said would never happen. She worked her way through college. She ended up going to work with a corporate 500 company, earning six figures. And in her middle 40s, she said, okay, I want to give back. Okay. And she came to the School of Metaphysics thinking that she had it together and that she was wanting to learn how she could help people move out of their stuff and have more success.
Okay.
And then she began to realize that even though she had defied her stepfather and made something of herself, she still had fears and doubts and identity that she was worthless and had no value. Even though she had proved it wrong, if certain circumstances would come up, her memory would immediately go to the past when she was told she wasn't valuable, she wasn't this, she wasn't that. And so she had to learn how to let that go.
So she would react in fear of unworthiness
Yes.
when triggered by a certain situation that reminded her of the abuse that her stepfather,
Right.
the verbal abuse. Okay.
And so everybody grows up learning different things, but
Right.
everybody also doesn't receive total love and trust and respect and those things that we expect. This is the key.
Okay.
The key is when we don't receive those things, the ego takes over and draws out talents within ourselves to overcome whatever we have. But we're still attached emotionally to those things that we didn't get, because as a young child, all the way up to the age of 7, we don't have the ability to reason. So when something bad happens or unfortunate happens, who do we blame? We blame ourselves. We think it's our fault. So let's say 2 children were sitting at the dinner table and mom was making dinner and they're waiting for dad to come home, and he doesn't come home, the food's getting cold, and the kids are getting upset, and pretty soon dad barrels in the door. He's obviously drunk, pushes mom around, screams at the kids, and goes in the bedroom and goes to bed. And the kids are screaming and crying because they don't understand it. And mom maybe getting herself off the floor, and one child's going over and hugging her mom. The other child's chasing after dad and hanging on his leg and saying, "Why are you doing this?" We all react differently
Right.
to the same circumstance. But in those moments, each child, because they don't have the ability to reason, says, okay, there must be something wrong with me, because why would dad do this?
So it was imprinted at an early age.
Right. So because we have soulful, high expectations, when we don't get them, we blame ourselves. That becomes part of our identity.
The unworthiness.
Yes.
Okay.
And it shows up in a lot of ways for a lot of different people. So you have 3 kids in a circumstance like that, each one's going to take it differently. Some will sit up there against the wall and go, "Oh my God," and some people will be aggressive, but they all decide how they're not valuable.
And the reaction imprints the unworthiness because
Yeah.
they may feel guilty about the reaction they have.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you fast forward to adults
Okay.
and you understand universal laws, especially things like the law of attraction, if you built an identity from a child that you're not valuable in these areas, well, you also attract more circumstances or events to yourself, and then you're immediately going, "Oh, well, I already know I'm not valuable because of this, so I must not be valuable." And you even build a stronger identity about it's false, but that you're not valuable, or you're not lovable, or you're not this, or you're not that.
So does the School of Metaphysics, in a sense, say, Lisa, stop, look, and listen, and you have control over your thoughts? I like to even say I have control over my feelings, if I can get to that point.
You do.
And how do I go about shifting from the reactionary mode programming to, before I actually act, because I like to say feelings, thoughts, words, and actions. So before I get to the words and action stage, how can I shift that, rewind, and do something that is worthy and is in alignment with my higher self?
Well, you said the word, react. We have to teach people not to react.
Okay.
It's a fast forward. It's an automatic pilot thing we do.
So sit back and observe and allow?
It's ego-based. Well, we have to teach people how to be calm first, how to have peace of mind.
Calm, okay.
Because if you practice concentration and undivided attention, which are the basics of meditation, which
Right.
more and more people are meditating now, what we're realizing is the scatterness, the busyness, the autopilot things, the habitual things that we do, slow down, we can see them. Now you have more choices because you see, oh my God, that emotion's coming up my spine and I want to beat this guy to, and then you're, okay, I can't do that.
Right.
Unfortunately you walk out in the streets and some people were doing that and some people aren't. So people in various forms of reaction.
Right.
So the more we can teach people how to quiet their mind, it gives them peace. It gives them joy. It gives them bliss. It also gives you control of yourself. So we teach what we call 10 essential life skills, which are skills you and I have heard about our whole life, but nobody has ever taught us how to use them. And that we call them life skills, but they're basically mind skills.
Okay.
When you practice them, you enhance them. Things like concentration, undivided attention, listening, reasoning, imagination, memory, breath. And those types of things are all things we've heard of. What humanity is about to find out is the more we practice those, it's a mental skill. So concentration, if you actually every day take 5, 10, 15 minutes and practice focusing your attention on one thing and one thing only, at first you find out it's almost impossible because your mind is just too busy and too many things are happening. But through those practices, we can enhance each one of those skills. Our perception grows, our awareness goes, you start understanding how thought actually is cause, you start seeing how energy works, why you receive what you are. You become much more intelligent about who you are, and the blissful thing, you're aware of how well your mind works and that you're in control of it instead of it controlling you.
And you see the magic, so you have self-evidence.
Right.
And so that's when it gets exciting, I bet.
Right.
Yeah.
So now you're in a better place instead of being in any kind of reaction mode. If you want to create something, then you visually think about it, you visualize it, so that you can send that thought to the inner mind. So it says, oh, this is what Kerry wants. And then there's a process that goes through before it comes back out into the life you want. Then we have what we call reasoning, which is one of those life skills that allows us to observe how the thoughts created what we received. Or maybe we didn't quite get what we wanted. Maybe we asked for a brand new car, but we didn't really think about it.
Yeah.
And we went to pick it up and the guy said, here's your new pink convertible Cadillac. And we go, what?
Well, is it important to have detachment to outcome? I found that in my realm, in my practice. If I keep focusing on something I want, then in the now, I don't have it, and that's what perpetuates.
Right.
So I can put out there an intention. However, I feel for me, be totally detached to the outcome so that I bring in the intention in the now and allow whatever happens in my highest good.
Right.
So detachment to the outcome is important for me.
Yeah. And because of our fears and because of what we've learned and been programmed with, our negativity, it's all based on fear because we didn't get what we expected as a child. So now we have these mental and emotional limitations, which is part of our psyche now. It's part of our personality.
Right.
And so most of the time when we try to control something like the outcome or somebody liking us or whatever it is, that's the ego trying to do that.
And as bizarre as it may seem for the listeners here, you may disagree with me. I don't even get into the praying and hoping because for me, praying and hoping for something in the future just tells the universe my thoughts now that I don't have it. And then that's what's created in the now. So if I am hoping for a new friendship or a new home or a new car, a new red car, then all I'm telling the universe now is that I don't have it. And that's what's created over and over is I don't have it.
Right. The art of visualization is to image whatever it is we want.
Okay.
It's okay to have the desires because that's what brings things to us. But the key is to image it as if you already have it.
Yes. And I know the template is imagine, visualize, and create for this Dreams for Society. I'd like to add to that what you just said. Imagine, visualize, and create as if we've already gotten it. We have it right now.
Right.
And we can detach from the outcome because we already have it.
So a simple example would be if you're going on a trip or you're wanting to go on a trip to Hawaii, then some people would imagine, okay, I have to make more money and put this amount of money in the bank, and I have to buy tickets, and I have to arrange kids to get out of school, and there's all kinds of little things.
Blocks, limitations.
Yes. And so if we focus on all that, then we're not so much focusing on the end result. So what you should really be focusing on is having a ball in Hawaii.
Okay.
We don't have to know how we got there. We can add some detail, but the whole idea is we want to be able to go in 3 weeks, take the whole family, have the best time, weather's great, go to certain events, blah, blah, blah. Just imagine that happening as if it's already here.
Right.
and then you let it go. So you've planted that seed into the mind. Now the mind says, oh, this is what he wants.
Very interesting. And I have an example too about that. Years and years ago, before I knew any of this, it was back in 1993 when I was still a lawyer lobbyist, which I just ended at the end of last year. And I was one of 6 law firms. I was in a law firm, and I was one of 6 lawyers that were vying for a big account with Anheuser-Busch. There's no secret of that. And a friend of mine who I knew from a past life, who was a lawyer in Ohio who also represented Anheuser-Busch, called me and said, Lisa, here's the trick. So what's that? He said, imagine that you already have the account and start acting that way.
Yeah.
Send them things they need to maybe be they need to know or be interested in. But imagine right now that you already represent Anheuser-Busch. And so fast forward, I was with the potential client in a boardroom at the firm I was in, and he said to me, Lisa, he said, you're hired. He said, you want to know why you're hired? I said, why? And he said, because everyone I asked had something good to say about you, and all the other people, there was something not real positive. I was like, really? Well, that might be another tangential component here. Don't burn any bridges with anyone. However, I knew, despite what he said, that the real reason why I landed the account was because I'd already imagined I'd landed the account.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I hoped or desired.
And part of it is expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Which
expecting.
has to overrule doubts and fears.
Okay.
We have to leave out doubts and fears.
I didn't have any doubts and fears.
Well, that's good. That's why you got it. So in our life, we have doubts and fears about a lot of things.
Okay.
But in your imagination, you have the privilege of leaving them out.
Now, why can't I do that with divine friendship?
Who says you can't?
Do I have to find someone that gets it like you do before I can be in a divine friendship?
I don't think so. And this is why. And we talked about all this to build up to this so we can understand ourselves better.
All right.
In the book of Matthew, in the Bible, and a lot of other places in the Bible and other holy works, it says that as a human being, we have 144,000 aspects of ourselves.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The 12 disciples in the Bible represent the 12 aspects of ourselves that are most important that we learn about ourselves. Okay. So these, by aspects, I mean these are just ways of thinking. Maybe it's about being honest.
Okay.
Or maybe it's about believing. Or maybe it's about completing things. So as a soul and a spirit and a human being, knowing who we are is we have to understand all these aspects of ourselves. So you come into my life and you have different experiences. Not only in this lifetime, you have different expertise, different learning. You have aspects of yourself that you've developed that I have not. Mm-hmm. And vice versa for you. So we become attracted to people that have things or aspects of themselves, understandings that we can learn. Okay. So every person in the world in our life that we meet, whether we're standing on a street corner waiting for the light for 60 seconds, or you meet them at a restaurant, or you know them for a week, or you know them for a month, or your whole life, we have something to learn from everybody, but we don't teach people that. Mm. And so everybody in your life is bringing something to you to the point where we need to be saying, well, why are you in my life? Mm. Why did I draw you here? And so then we need to start saying, well, what are those things? So we actually teach it in dream interpretation. Okay. Because subconscious mind knows. My subconscious mind knows why I drew you in my life and yours does in reverse. Okay. There may be one or many reasons. We even know that most people that you've met in this lifetime and have had any kind of experience with, you've already met them and been with them in other lifetimes. On some level. So the soul is going through karmic lessons to understand creation, how it takes place. So in some form, other lifetime, you have lived and I have lived, and we've been associated in some way, and we were working on creating some understandings together, but we didn't finish. So in this lifetime, we've showed up again.
So everyone we meet in this lifetime is an
Exactly.
opportunity for us to get it right this time, to enter into a divine friendship.
Right. And the divineness is going to the place that there's good in everybody. Yes, people do dumb things and make dumb mistakes.
Right.
And it's our emotional attachments and our own fears that goes to blame.
Yes.
And so if we learn to let that go, I'm not saying it's easy, but that's the highest part of us we're supposed to achieve, is the opportunity to meet you or meet anybody, is to learn to be empathetic, understand how they live, how do they make their choices. In doing so, in having experiences, now you and I can create experience. That's what we're doing right now. We're creating an experience that teaches us both something that we didn't know before. And it creates that much of a bond. And every time you have more and more experiences in whatever path you decide to take with anybody, you create more and more of a bond, a connection. You begin to see how that person thinks, how that person expresses themselves, what that person believes in. And what do? We go, oh, I never thought about that. I could do that. Or maybe that's something I don't want to do. So we learn from other people what we like and who we want to be, and what we don't like and what we don't want to be. It doesn't make anything to do with bad or wrong.
Okay.
It's the whole entire part of our growth that's what the soul's purpose is for us to help each other grow. So you've learned, now you have wisdom in many areas of your life, and you can turn around and share and teach with other people. It's mine or anybody else you meet prerogative to say, oh, that's pretty interesting. I want to incorporate that into my life. That's how evolution takes place. If you spent your whole life in a closet, you wouldn't evolve because you don't have experiences to make any kind of judgments on how to grow yourself. And that's what we're responsible for. In the education we do now, we keep taking the responsibility away from people.
So I don't have to wait for somebody to come along that gets it like you do. Because I control my own thoughts and feelings, and that allows me to perceive reality the way I want to perceive it in a high frequency, then everyone that comes along can be a divine friend. Sure. Because I am at the controls.
Right.
I don't have to wait for the other people to change. And in fact, I can't change them.
No, you can't. So what we want to look for in friends or relationships, partners, whatever form you want to look at, is, because everybody's on their own path. Some people are stumbling through life, some people are moving fast through life, and everybody else is in the middle. And so if you want to understand somebody, you and I meet.
Right.
Then if we, in our conversations and our immediate experiences, can start saying, well, what's meaningful to you? What are your ideals? Or what's important to you? If we can establish what those things are, and we have some of those in common, now we have areas that we can create from, that we can support each other in, we can learn from each other in, or we can create new things with. And so the school teaches that we're here to decide who do we want to become. Well, who do we want to become is we want to be compatible with the Creator. That's what the soul wants.
Right.
So we have to learn these 144,000 aspects of ourselves, which is why people are in our life. So I can learn from you or anybody that I choose to. How much I learn from you, or how fun that is, or how much of a pain that is, it can be told to us by what do we have in common in the way of ideals or virtues or meaningful things. If we have some things in common, which we already figured that out to some degree, just because we're doing this.
Right.
But you can go as deep as you want with somebody if you realize the reason you're together is to learn from each other and to support each other in that growth.
And I like to say amplify each other's perfection.
Right. So there's things that you do that I don't do very well, and vice versa. So that's when we have to have compassion and learn how to be cooperative. And because I came to you to learn this stuff. Maybe I'm not really conscious of that yet, but that's why we're drawn together. And so if everybody did that with everybody, then we would all be constantly learning and then turning around and sharing that with other people. So we would all be evolving. I guess we're comfortable.
I think she loves you. She's your divine friend.
I guess so. In another lifetime, I guess. I had a thought, just one more. Okay. 2 years ago, when I was in the third cycle in the School of Metaphysics, one of the things we do is write a thesis.
Oh, okay.
And I hadn't done that since college, so that was a major interesting thing for me. But my subject was longevity as consciousness creates it, not health, nutrition, exercise, but how our thoughts and attitudes create longevity.
Right.
I interviewed about 75 people from everywhere I could find. They were in their 90s or 100, over 100. Mm. And it was one of the most fascinating things that I think I have ever done in my entire life, because I met some amazing people just because of how they used their mind.
Oh, wow.
And what became very evident, even though everybody was doing totally different things, was the people that are curious about life are constantly getting involved, investigating, initiating, helping, and they have experiences with people. They learn, then they turn around and share or teach others. And what comes from that? Fulfillment.
Oh, yeah.
And fulfillment is what energizes us. It what allows us to stay healthy. We have DNA to live forever. It's our thoughts and attitudes that destroy it.
That's a powerful word, fulfillment.
Yes. So,
because you've heard of life purpose, but I like fulfillment a lot better.
In a friendship, if you want to make it divine, you start paying attention to, how do I help you have and create fulfillment? How do you help me create fulfillment? Because we know that those are the vibrations, the conscious vibrations, that allows our health to remain good. It's when we get into the negativity and the stress and all that, which doctors are proving it over and over again, is what's killing us. It's allowing disease to grow. So the more you and I learn about each other on what your needs are, what my needs are, what talents and gifts you have, then we're in a place in our conversations and whatever it is we want to create with each other to help each other grow and be fulfilled, which allows us to live with more vitality, have more experiences, and it's exactly what the soul wants. If we're not creating, the soul gets a little upset. And I have a story that just knocks my socks off. It tells you the control the soul has.
Oh, let's hear it.
I'm going to guess it was 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I was in class. I was living in St. Louis. I was in class with 5 other people. We were in the second cycle, and my teacher, Judy, is and was a nurse, an RN. She was my teacher. In the middle of class, one of the other students came up. There was a phone call at the school. She went to the phone, and it was the hospital, and they said, "I'm sorry to tell you, we have your son here. He's been in a horrible accident. You need to come down to the hospital because he's not going to live through the night." Oh. And long story short, Larry and I, her in that class, went with her. And when she got there, her 2 sons were in a car. They left a wedding and a reception, both of them drunk, and they wrapped the car around a telephone pole. And the son that was in critical condition had gone through the windshield. And they said, "There isn't anything we can do. He's going to die." The 3 of us went in there and moved energy through him all night long.
Wow.
In the best way we could do it. He eventually went into a coma. He did not die. For I think for about a month and a half. When he came to, instead of being 37, he had the mind of a 7-year-old.
Oh.
He didn't remember who his mother was, or his girlfriend, or any of his family. That eventually came back around. He had to go through a lot of physical therapy. He's still in a wheelchair this 8, 9 years later, whatever it is. Anyway, a year or so later, after he had convalesced and was doing better and starting to lead a little bit of his own life, we at the School of Metaphysics do what we call intuitive reports and health analysis. If you've ever heard about Edgar Cayce and the work he did in the 20s and 30s and 40s, we have taken that process and evolved it. We've probably done 60,000 of them in the last 40 years for people.
Wow.
And
that's
so
awesome.
she asked her son, would he be willing to receive an intuitive report about his health, and which comes straight from your energy field, from the subconscious mind. And he said, sure.
Okay.
And so she asked, you can ask questions as well. The report is done with a conductor and a reporter team, so no consciousness involved. The reporter actually is, through a hypnotic trance, she moves her attention inward to the inner levels, where she can read what most people know as the Akashic Records,
Right.
which basically says every thought you've ever had, every word you've ever spoken, every action you ever take has a vibration, and it's now recorded in the universe. Mm-hmm. And it's in your energy field. So in this report, she asked, why didn't he die? And then the second question was, why did he live? And the answer came back, and when you go into subconscious mind, that's where the soul resides. We also know it's total truth, because hypnotherapists and so forth have been doing it for ages, going into the inner levels to find out what's truth. And so the answer came back, he wasn't living a productive life. He wasn't causing any learning. He was playing, and getting drunk and doing those. It didn't say those things, but he wasn't living a purposeful life. So the soul wasn't learning anything. And the soul basically said, okay, we're done. I can't learn anything here. It's not working. I'm not getting done what I expected to do in this body. And so it said, we're going to die. Well, then he didn't die. He went into a coma. And she said, so why did you live? And the answer came back, well, the soul decided that in this body, in the state of mind it was in as a 7-year-old, it could still learn other things. So it decided, we're going to keep moving.
Wow.
So we've had other things come up about other people, and we now realize that until we become consciousness as human beings, the soul is directing our experiences and directing our life, trying to encourage us to be consciously aware, to do it ourselves. So that's why friendships and relationships are so important.
Right.
If we tell people the tools they need, the skills to focus their attention in the right way, let go of attachments, and right and wrong and good and bad, that we're all here for the same reason. Even the people that do horrible things are here just like we are.
Right.
They just got stuck.
Yeah.
And we've all been stuck in places. Some not so good, some horrible, some, That's what we have to let go, is our attachments. When you die someday, 50 years from now, when you die, the soul leaves the body. It has to let go of all those emotional attachments.
Are you saying I'm young?
Yeah.
I'm going to live to be an old woman. Okay.
I'm going for 120 myself. So
there you go.
Yeah,
Me too. Because we've got a lot to learn still before we give up this body.
The divineness of friendship is both of you having the attitude that you're aiding each other to grow in whatever way so you get to be yourself. Even if we're married, you get to be yourself. I get to be myself. As a couple, we decide, who are we going to be together? What are we creating?
Right.
So many situations we have with partnerships or relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, is we get connected because you're my better half. I can't do this without you, which is totally wrong.
Right. We're already whole.
Yeah. And why would you want to be in a relationship where you're dependent on that person for those things instead of developing yourself?
So divine friendship is letting go of the codependencies.
Right. And it's coming from a relationship of strength. Yes. And that's a different way of thinking.
Focus on our strengths.
Yes.
And focus on what we want to create.
Mm-hmm. So any relationship you have is to understand what your strengths are, through conversation, through experience, understand what your strengths, so that we can bring that to each other. Mm-hmm. And so think of all the love songs that have been written. I can't live without you stuff. It's like, we're our own worst enemy.
I know, it's programming us to be dependent.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet we're very powerful.
Consuming what we think we haven't created, and we really have created all of this.
It's the self-value part that gets in our way.
Self-value, self-love.
And that's, we have a lot of teaching there. It's going to take a while. But we have to wake up. There's a lot of people waking up to realize now that the chaos in the world right now that's going on is because of poor self-worth.
You know, I've been saying, until I have 100% peace within me, I'm not going to see 100% peace in this world.
Yeah. So a divine friendship starts with us.
Yes.
How do you have a friendship and a relationship with yourself? You have to let go of your limitations and your self-judgments.
And our unworthiness issues.
Because you learned them when you were a kid, and you multiplied them through your other experiences because you drew more and more of those experiences, hoping to learn that that's not the case. It's a false illusion. All self-value, lack of self-worth is a false illusion because we blamed ourselves because we didn't know what else to do. Those children sitting in the dining room waiting for Dad to come home for dinner, they didn't understand he was drunk. They didn't realize that he created that situation. They blamed themselves.
No. So, yeah, I get it.
So, look how many times, and some of them can be purely innocent. When I was 8 years old, I moved from Cleveland, Ohio to St. Louis. My family moved. I moved into third grade. One of the first things we did was go out to recess and they were picking softball teams. I love softball. And as tall as I am, I was tall then too, but they didn't know me. But I didn't take that into factor. I'm jumping up and down, I'm trying to get chosen, and I was the last one. Even of all the girls, I was the last one chosen. And I remember going home to my mom and saying, let's go back to Cleveland, I don't like this place, I'm not staying. I was insulted.
Right.
And to this day, I have an aversion of getting into lines and waiting my turn or raising my hand. It still has that old emotion that comes up. Even though I get why, there's a small lack of self-value, but I made that judgment of myself. They didn't do it. I blamed them, but it was me that made that choice. Even if something as simple as that.
So that feeling, when you're remote viewing in a sense, that past experience and bringing it into the now, the feeling you're bringing in now is what?
It's whatever your identity is.
I love it.
So in any experience...
And you can supplant that, right?
Yes.
You can put a new program in.
That's why we need to be more awake and observing our thoughts and our attitudes.
Right.
So before we explode or have a reaction, we see what happens. So you and I have an experience. In the moment of that experience, the mind is already programmed to go to the past and say, have I ever been in this circumstance before? Because you're checking to see if you have wisdom or experience of how to handle it. Well, most people do that on autopilot. We don't consciously go back there and say and start looking through the archives trying to figure out.
The autopilot would be the reaction.
Yeah, the habitual autopilot is going to the past. Well, all we do is pull out the emotion. We don't see the thought form of what really happened. So in case of those kids, that was horrifying. Dad came home, screamed and yelled at us, pushed Mom around, and this guy is insulting me. So here we go again. So most of the time, that guy that we think is insulting us, we're reacting to him? No, we're still reacting to what's in the past. That's our identity.
We're assuming that if we see someone drunk,
Right.
for example, that they're going to be abusive.
Right. So whatever circumstances happen to us, under whatever conditions, the law of attraction, if we don't clean them up, and nobody's teaching us to do that, if we don't clean them up, then we keep drawing more and more of those opportunities, because the karmic lesson is, if you learn it, you don't have to go through this anymore. But if we didn't teach people why, then we keep going.
Like Groundhog's Day.
Right, and exactly. And the message is, the identity keeps building deeper and deeper. So that's even a better reason for divine friendship, because I know you've been through stuff, and I know you have your identities. I don't know what they are yet, because I haven't known you that long. But you have to know I have identities that are not healthy,
Right.
and we do our best to move through them or around them or avoid them or whatever, but we haven't healed them.
Right, right.
And the healing part is letting go
Yeah.
of those emotional attachments. And as you know, emotions are pretty strong, and some people eat, sleep, and breathe their emotions, and they're different than feelings. Feelings are the physiological response that goes through the body because we're attached to that emotion or we see that emotion. So the best thing about divine friends is the support you can give, knowing that they've learned this, and this is part of the soul's learning, is to go through this karma and gain this wisdom and understanding, so you don't have to go through that karma anymore. Because once you learn it, you're done with that particular karma. You've learned that aspect of yourself, and you move forward.
So if like you're remembering something that wasn't so good, and you supplant that old emotion with a positive emotion, a higher frequency emotion, then you're done, and you might even forget that old memory. That memory might be wiped out, right, in your brain.
I don't think it ever completely goes away, but if you understand what took place, so if you're one of those children and you go back to, okay, now I look at that experience even though it might have been 30 years ago.
Right.
You know, I can say, okay, now I understand Dad came home drunk all the time. That was one time when he came home drunk. That really wasn't my fault. Even though I got all upset about that, and I didn't think, why would Dad do that to me? You know, I blame myself. It's like now you can reason and say, oh, that was me making a poor assumption because I didn't know any better. It really was Dad, the fact that he was drunk. Still not a place for blame. That was just the conditions that the soul set up for us to learn from.
So the memory of the abuse of the drunken dad coming into the now is distorted with the lower frequency of the emotion.
Yeah, because we pay more attention to the emotions than
and
we do the thought.
And if we supplant it with a higher frequency of unconditional love, then
and do the reasoning to see what the thought form was, what really happened.
Then I think what happens for me anyway is the story comes back in, but it isn't distorted.
Right.
I just don't see it the same way.
And that's why we teach the 10 essential life skills.
Okay.
Because if you develop those mental skills and emotional skills, concentration, undivided attention, reasoning, then our perception expands, our awareness expands, and things slow down in the mind. They don't really slow down, but your perception sees things clearly. So if an emotion is coming up your spine, then before you react, you go, okay, then I'm not going to react here, but I realize I got to figure some things out before I continue on in this conversation. And so often, I can be with a group of people and something going on and something comes up that triggers something in me where, especially if it's strong and I don't know if I can control it or not, a lot of times I'll just say, I'm having an emotional reaction right now, it has nothing to do with you. I'm going to walk away and I'll come back and I might even tell you about it, but it's not your fault. I just got to go deal with it myself.
Right. So I
used to be embarrassed to do that.
Allow yourself to slow down,
yes.
So you can observe, so you can be the observer. Okay.
And I used to be embarrassed to do that, but I had many people come up to me now and say, "That was the coolest thing I've ever seen anybody do." Because we realized we all go through that stuff.
In that heat of the moment.
And you gave us permission to let you go.
Right.
And we didn't know exactly what was going on, but we knew you were in charge of yourself.
Well, you know what I did one time? This has been probably 6 years ago. I was at a nice dinner with a few people that I just ended a conference with. They were two of the people I didn't know, two of the people I did know from previous lives. And it was a nice dinner, but somehow I felt like those two new women that I just met in the conference were ganging up on me somehow, or at least that was my perception. Again, divine friends can be teachers, and they challenge us to learn something. And rather than react, because the conference was all about this metaphysical stuff, I decided, I think I'm going to practice what I just learned. And I said, excuse me, I want to go to the ladies' room. I'll be right back. So I went to the bathroom of the restaurant. I didn't need to use the restroom. Instead, I looked in the mirror because I was so frustrated. I wanted to react in anger at these two women and defend myself. And I knew if I got to the speaking and acting stage, it'd be harder for me to cleanse that later and to supplant old emotions and whatever. I went into the mirror and I looked at myself and I said, my gosh, that's me? I looked really beautiful that day for some reason, to me. And I started to say, I am all these good things. What I didn't feel at the time because I was so frustrated. But I said, I am amazing, I am awesome, I am lovely, I am kind. And I spent about enough time I was supposed to in the bathroom. I went back and the whole thing shifted.
Yeah.
Those two ladies apologized and they were nice to me the rest of the dinner.
Yeah. We need to be teaching people more about the energies that we create.
Yeah.
The resistances we create. Because people know it. They don't consciously always know it. But if any one of us walk into a situation and we're already anticipating something or worried about something or resisting something, that's an energy we're putting out.
So it's up to me to have a higher frequency to be a divine friend with those two people.
Sure.
If I had chosen a reaction and amplified their faults rather than their perfection,
And they probably would have reacted to.
then I would have been given up the opportunity, these two women that had come into my life, to be a divine friend with them. Is what we've been talking about.
Right.
It's beautiful. Now, where can people get a hold of you, Kerry?
Sometimes I think I'm everywhere.
That's good.
Well, the easiest place to find me is the School of Metaphysics here in Indianapolis. And you can call the school. The phone number there is 317-251-5285. And or the email address is Indianapolis@SOM for School of Metaphysics.org.
Indianapolis at SOM.org.
Right. Those are the two easiest ways to find. If you want to come by, you're welcome to come by. The school is mostly open in the evenings. We're at the corner of 62nd and Keystone in Indianapolis, which is a little bit north of the city and a little bit east.
Near Broad Ripple.
Right at Broad Ripple. And for those people in this area that are familiar with that.
Right.
And so that's the easiest way to find me. Other than that, you know, I'm doing things like this. I'm doing more and more lectures, workshops, everywhere we can share with people to know themselves a little bit more.
Well, Kerry, you are doing a fantastic service for all of us. And I encourage everyone to go to the School of Metaphysics website, enter a class, get in touch with Kerry. He's got so much wisdom and understanding to offer us to make our lives better and enter into these beautiful divine friendships.
They're really amazing. It's kind of a path I'm on right now, is to just keep developing them. And the fun part is each one is different because we all bring different things to the table.
So if you had one thought to leave us with, what would it be?
Oh boy.
That's a big one.
Well, we have to start with ourselves. So whatever way you can find to calm your mind. It doesn't mean you have to become a zombie. We're not suggesting that at all. But you do want to have the ability in the right moments at the right time when you need to take a deep breath through breathing, through concentration, through a myriad of things, meditations. There's a lot of things we can practice that we can calm the busyness in our mind, because that's when we gain a totally different perception. We're not defensive. We're not aggressive. We realize there's a whole nother way of living that's more peaceful, more rewarding, more divine. And so anybody that wants that can do that by themselves or come to classes to learn how to enhance their way of thinking.
Oh, Kerry, thank you so much for sharing this time with us today on Dreams for Society. We'll put Kerry's contact information below, and please comment. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you, Kerry. This is such an exciting time to be alive, to enter into these divine friendships, and to know how to do it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.